Everybody good? Great. We'll get started. So, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us either in person or virtually. I am Mayor Devin T. Murphy, and I now call the regular City Council meeting of August 15, 2023 to order. The first item on our agenda is the call to order and Pledge of Allegiance. So, if you are willing and able, please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item number 2 is our land acknowledgement, which reads, before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Ohlone people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Ohlone elders, past, present, and future, who call this place Ohlone land, the land that Pinole sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Ohlone community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. That brings us next to item number 3 of the agenda, which is the roll call and City Clerk's report. Madam City Clerk, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. Mayor Murphy.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
Here.
Councilmember Tave.
Here.
Councilmember Martinez Rubin.
Here.
Councilmember Sasai.
Here.
Thank you. City Manager Murray.
Here.
City Attorney Kasher.
Here.
Mayor and Council, the agenda was posted on August. I just want to make sure that I'm quoting the correct. On August 11th at 4 p.m. with all legally required notices. Written comments were received in advance of the meeting, posted to the website, distributed to staff and council, and made available at the back of the chambers. Does the council have any conflicts to report on our agenda items this evening? Okay, seeing none, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. That brings us to the next item, which is the closed session. There are no closed session items this evening, which means there's no report. We'll move down to item number 6, citizens to be heard, and we'll ask the City Clerk if we have any speakers this evening.
Thank you. It looks like we do not have any in person. Let's go to remote comments.
Yes, we do have one online. Telephone caller, last 4 numbers 5748. Please go ahead and state your name and city of residence.
Hello,
Yes, go ahead.
can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, my name is Anthony, a longtime citizen of Pinole, over 40 years, and taxpayer and advocate and a steward amongst other people for a better Pinole. I hate to sound like a broken record again, but what is the city public works or city manager doing about all the street light lamp outages throughout the city and in the city, in and around the city parks and the city parking lots? And not all of those have numbers on them that can be recorded around the parks, around the turnabouts on Adobe Road, the dog park above the bathroom. The big giant spotlight's been out now for almost over 6 months. The light in the Downer Thornton Barbecue Grove across the dog park, pole lights are out, and in the turnabout on Adobe Road, up and down Pinole Valley Road, we have several light outages that Director Mishra said it would take $100 or less just to take an exchange of light bulbs. So how many people does it take to swap out or change a light bulb? And that's not really a joke, but it had been. Amongst other things, I'd like to know what the why there's a double standard in our city, in and around our city parks with public maintenance. Is it because some parks are kept up or upkept very well and nicely by private maintenance contractors, and others are just thrown out to our public works as needed or on a low priority list for our public works department to get them. Case in point, Fernandez Park has pretty good clean bathrooms. The timers on the magnetic locks work. Somewhat the same down by
Sir, you
Bay
have
Point.
45 seconds.
But in and around other parks, like around the baseball diamond, the kids' playground, the water fountains are broken there. At the basketball court by the Pinole Valley Park playground, the park maintenance issue around the men's bathroom at the dog park, the doors are locking at the wrong hours and the wrong times are being set. The bathrooms aren't being kept up clean. It just a bad look for the city of Pinole to have half the parks look one way and less than half the parks look another way. So what can be done by the Public Works Department, if not the city manager, to turn things around on those two items? The lighting up and down San Pablo.
Thank you, sir. We'll make sure to get our staff to respond to some of those inquiries. I know there was a number of them, so if staff can just take a look at those issues and come back with a report about how they're being addressed, if they are not already. Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
No, Mayor, there are no more public comments.
Okay. Do you have any other public comments in person?
Not at this time. We do have someone that's on their way that would like to speak. So
Okay.
if we come back to that section.
Great. And we also have a second public comment section. So if that folks want to speak, that'll be at the end of the meeting as well. That brings us to, we'll actually start with item 8, which is our recognitions, presentations, and community events. We don't have any proclamations this evening, but we do have 2 presentations. I'll ask that we start with the first one, which is our AB 43 setting speed limits. And that's our a presentation by our Public Works Director, Chandra Mishra.
Okay, thank you. Just give me a minute to get the slides up.
Okay.
Okay, good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, public, and staff. This item was requested by the City Council a while back, and so I put together this presentation to give a detailed briefing about what AB 43 is and how the new law kind of sets different criteria to set speed limits for various locations and on the basis of traffic safety. So AB 43 was actually put forth by Assembly Member Laura Friedman of District 43, and to amend and add various sections to the current California Vehicle Code relating to traffic safety. This bill was approved by Governor in October 2021. So a little background regarding traffic speed. How that speed limits are set in California is a process called 85th percentile speed. So a speed survey is actually would measure the speed drivers were driving at and set the speed limit to reflect what 85% of the drivers were driving at, which was believed to be the safest speed. And California law requires cities to conduct a speed survey every 10 years in order for a speed limit to be enforceable, even if no changes have been made to the roadway. CALSTA, or the State Transportation Agency, convened a zero traffic fatalities task force to make recommendation to the legislature on what reforms the state should make to change the way we set the speed limits. So what's new? This AB 43 bill would authorize the local authorities to consider safety of vulnerable pedestrian groups and designate safety corridors which locations can have a lower speed. And this AB 43 gives those ability for the local authority to choose and define those locations. And so I can just created a small table just to show the difference between some of the existing law and what AB 43, how it is different. But not all the, not each and every difference, but just the main differences which has been put forth by this. In the existing law, the speed limits were limited until 25 miles per hour, meaning we were not allowed to have any speeds to be below 25 miles per hour. However, the new AB 43 would authorize Caltrans as well as the local authorities to declare a speed limit of 20 or even 15 miles per hour. The existing law authorizes a local authority where to have a lowered speed limit if you are approaching to a school building or school grounds, and but it did not give the authority to actually limit the speed which is beyond the which is beyond before the school zone. So but now AB 43 did not change regarding the school zone, but it actually added which are contiguous to a business district definition, so where you can actually uh, control those or have the authority to allow a speed limit or declare with a engineering and a traffic survey to provide that. Existing law always followed the 85th percentile speed of free-flowing traffic. But AB 43 would authorize the local authority to reduce the speed limit further. And that is the how to reduce the speed. Those details are also provided in the California Vehicle Code as well as in the MUTCD revisions that Caltrans have updated recently. So here are the some of the vehicle code changes and the process to how the local authority can reduce the speed limits uh, to a reasonable and safe to be safe. So the portion of highway has to be designated as a safety corridor. I'll give the definition of how the safety corridor is defined in the next slide. And the local authority shall not deem more than 1/5 of their streets as safety corridors. A portion of the highway is adjacent to any local land or facility that generates high concentrations of bicyclists or pedestrians, especially those vulnerable groups such as children, seniors, persons with disability, and the unhoused. And just another point to note, a local authority may not lower a speed limit as authorized by this section until June 30, 2024, or until a judicial council has developed an online tool for educating infraction violations statewide, which haven't happened yet. So we have to stick to the June 30, 2024. Safety corridor. The safety corridor definition was recently updated by Caltrans in March 2023, which says a roadway segment within an overall roadway network where the highest number of serious injury and fatality crashes occur. One or more of the required crash weighing factors listed in one of the tables in MUTCD shall be utilized to prioritize the locations of fatal and serious injury crashes in developing the safety corridor. And these safety corridors have to be uh, defined and passed by a local ordinance to be effective, and where we actually can reduce the speed limit. And there are some other intricacies to that. Even if 85th percentile speed limit is not the governing factor, but the new definition still gives the ability, the maximum the lowering of the speed. I think we can 12.5 miles per hour is what we can lower from the 85th percentile speed. So that is also a part of revision in the MUTCD. In summary, according to the National Transportation Safety Board, speeding accounts for nearly a third of all traffic fatalities. AB 43 implements policy recommendation from California Transportation Agency as outlined in the Zero Traffic Fatalities Task Force by providing more flexibility on setting speed limits based on safety rather than just on the traffic speed. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you, Director Mishra. We'll go to council for questions. Do we have any questions from our council? Councilmember Martinez Rubin.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Even before you presented, I saw the report on the dais and thought, great, we have another tool that can be used to help respond to the concerns that we get again and again from members of the public about their perceptions with regard to safety. So the question is this, what has the city done? How prepared is the city today? A little less than a year before we could actually implement something related to this state law.
So see, we haven't done anything to implement this. To implement this, as I mentioned, we have to declare a safety corridor where we can. Say, to identify the safety corridor, we definitely have to do either a traffic or engineering survey to identify locations such as, say, San Pablo Avenue, downtown area, or even at the Pinole Valley Road in the business district area, which sees a lot of pedestrian and bicyclists. Those areas we can define as a safety corridor. And if we do that by an ordinance, then we are able to set up a speed limit for those areas. But it would require a little more work to get the traffic study done so that we can provide why we declared that as a safety corridor.
Pardon me, thank you, Director Mishra. Related question, if my recollection is that the city has done a safety study that asked members of the public to help identify where locations throughout the city there had been some injuries or crashes or that kind of occurrence. Is that study completed? And if so, does that help in determine where we would define there be a safety corridor?
I'm not sure if the survey was done recently.
I think Councilmember Martinez Rubin is referring to the local road safety plan.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. That study is really about it's about the traffic deficiencies we have around town, and that has. But I don't believe that has the pedestrian counts. It does have some of the references to how much auto volume, vehicle volume, but I don't believe that has the pedestrian counts and all that. But I think that can be the best document to actually figure out where we can define these corridors.
One more question related to context in which these accidents, crashes, injuries occur, as few as there have been in the city of Pinole, there are still conditions that augment the risk of those occurrences. And I think those are the situations that we hear about from the members of the public. Does the law, or would you please, as we proceed with doing something related to this law and eventually creating ordinances to allow us to enforce it, would you please let us know what conditions are found to be acceptable to make an argument or create a case that a safety corridor can be defined even though the number of actual injuries or crashes, et cetera, are not in such a volume that they meet a certain threshold. So what I'm talking about is prevention, as I think we would really want to see happen prior to seeing the numbers of incidents that would justify creation of a safety corridor.
Yes, understood. I don't believe it requires a number that this many casualties or fatality must have happened. It actually gives the local authority an ability to actually define a safety corridor without having that, but maybe the past. They ask you to verify the suitors data. What is the state's what they call is this statewide integrated traffic record system data. But even without that, if a business district is defined and there is a high volume of pedestrians and bikers being used, then the local authority is able to decide or define a corridor. And that corridor also has a limit. I mean, all the details are actually there. Say it will be within 1,320 feet. Those details are part of the AB 43 and there, but I did not produce all those details here.
Great. I appreciate the flexibility, certainly. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Tave, any questions? Mayor Pro Tem Toms?
Yeah, I had the similar questions along with Councilmember Martinez Rubin, and wondering about what kind of surveys, traffic study do we need to do to add to the local road safety plan work that was done to get us to the point where we can declare safety corridors in the city, before the time in which we can start implementing this.
I believe it has to be a pedestrian and bicyclist count survey. That would be what we already have, the vehicle surveys as per the LRSP, but we do not have a survey for the count for the pedestrians and bicyclists.
Okay, and then what kind of direction would you need from council to go forward with something like that? Would it have to be in the CIP? Would it have to be just an agenda item? Can we give direction on this item?
I mean, this is a presentation item. I believe as a CIP, you can actually fund a project to complete a survey, and the desire to have a safety corridor established for certain sections of the city. You can give those direction, and we will follow through.
Great, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Sasai?
Thank you, Director Mishra, for the great presentation, and thank you to my colleagues for the great thoughtful questions. One question I did have is about a term that's used in this presentation, in this law, business activity district. Is it just any portion of a city where there's a concentration of businesses, or if not, what is the actual definition of a business activity district?
I will have to dig through that definition a little more before I can give you a good answer on that. Can I get back to you later?
Sounds great. Another question I had as well.
Sorry,
Sure.
just through the chair. I'm happy to provide that definition. I have it handy. So a business activity district is defined as an area that prioritizes commercial land uses at the downtown or neighborhood scale and meets at least 3 of the following 4 different requirements, one of which no less than 50% of the contiguous property fronting the highway consists of retail or dining commercial uses, including outdoor dining that open directly onto sidewalks adjacent to the highway. The second requirement would be there are parking spaces, including parallel, diagonal, or perpendicular spaces located alongside the highway. The third one is traffic control signals or stop signs regulating traffic flow on the highway are located at intervals of no more than 600 feet. And then the last one is there are marked crosswalks not controlled by traffic control devices. So 3 of those 4 would need to be met under the definition. It's Vehicle Code Section 22358.9.
Thank you for that explanation, City Attorney Gasher. The second question I had is that throughout the presentation, I've seen speed limits be reduced. I've seen 20 miles per hour and 15 miles per hour. Is the maximum speed reduction 5 miles per hour in any corridor? Or could speed limits be reduced by 10 miles per hour, 15 miles per hour if necessary?
So are you asking if the speed limit can be reduced by 10 miles per hour?
Anything past 5 miles per hour.
Yes. So what this AB 43 gives the ability from 85th percentile speed, we were always able to reduce the speed by 5 miles per hour. But AB 43 gives us the ability, if we know that this is a business corridor, a business district, or a safety corridor, the local authorities can reduce the speed further by another 5 miles an hour and enforce that.
Gotcha. So the maximum would be 10 miles per hour for speed reduction.
That's correct.
Gotcha. Thank you. And then June 30, 2024 is the date that I saw in this presentation. Is that the date that we can most, I guess, the soonest date when we can lower a speed limit in our city?
Yeah, that would be the date after which we can implement that if we are ready by then.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Sasai. We'll go to our public comments section if there are any in person or virtually.
We have no in-person comments. Let's go to virtual.
We do have one virtual telephone caller, last 4 numbers 5748. Please go ahead. Sir, are you able to unmute yourself?
Can you hear?
Yes, go ahead.
I was having problems with the unmuting and muting. I don't know if it's on my end or your end. It happened the other day in the Planning Commission meeting too. Housekeeping item on the that's kind of related to people participating in this agendized item. We should have better visual telephone hybrid phone numbers posted on the television screen again on the bottom or the top of the screen. It just takes a matter of reducing the font and adding the 1669 or the other call-in phone numbers for people to participate. You wonder why you only get 1 or 2 callers when we should be having more. This is a real hot subject, and maybe it should have been advertised or promoted more for this meeting. But I think we need more police enforcement, better police enforcement. We probably have a serious need or shortage of 1 or 2 more police officers we could have patrolling the hot spots in the city of Pinole. Fitzgerald Drive, Appian Way, San Pablo Avenue, Pinole Valley Road, Wright Avenue corridors, but I don't know. We asked for it through the TAPS meeting and council meeting over the last year and a half for an updated quarterly or semi-annual report from the police department. And we were promised or told by Chief Gang and or both Sergeant or Lieutenant now Avery in front of the TAPS, the old TAPS meeting last year that we're gonna have a presentation. Well, it just got put off, it never came. I'm talking about a police status update report at least twice a year, showing the number of citations given by the police, where they were given, what parts of town or corridors were given, the type of citations that were given, and go back to pre-COVID 2018 to compare 19 and 2020 through the current 2021, 22, and the first 6 months of 2023. So you can get a real handle and
Sir, you have
finger
45
on what's
seconds.
going on and what's happening throughout our city, rather than just sit there and not be proactive, or at least put some band-aids on the overall situation. You know, whether it's putting up speed bumps in some of the areas, or at least those speed reflectors, putting up better signage through the street, warning people of intersections or stop signs, and having consequences for these traffic perpetrators. You know, that's very, very important for the public health, safety, and our quality of life in Pinole. So we need to call those people to make a presentation.
All right, thank you. Do we have any other public comments virtually
No, Mayor, there are no
or
more
in
public
person?
comments.
In person, absolutely. If you can just fill out a yellow card for us, but feel free to make your comment and you can fill out the card afterward.
Is your comment related to this item? Okay, so we're taking comments for this item right now. We do have your card in queue, though. Thank you.
All right, any other public comments on this particular item of the agenda? Yes, please, sir. If you can, if you can go to the podium and feel free to fill out the card afterward.
This will be very short and sweet. It's probably directed towards the attorney. I'm curious, when you provided the 3 criteria for the zones being designated as a sort of a safety zone, and you mentioned commercial or business uses on the street. Does that also include the actual, let's say, zoning designation? For instance, if it's commercial mixed use, but there's maybe mostly residential on the street, would that still qualify? Specifically, I'm targeting in my question San Pablo Avenue, east of Pinole Valley Road, going towards Hercules. And that's it, my only comment.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. City Attorney Cashier. I'm so sorry, Mr. Bender. Okay, thank you, Mr. Bender. The City Attorney Cashier, are you able to respond to that, or can you follow up?
I'm happy to respond. So,
Thank you.
and I will follow up as well. It's a good question, Mr. Bender. The statutory section doesn't get into that level of detail, but there's often what's called annotations of the statute. So I'm happy to look into that and provide some detail on kind of how it defines that commercial mixed use. But the zoning does impact that requirement. So yeah, happy to follow up.
Thank you. So again, any other comments in person or virtually on item 8A1?
No other comments.
8B1, excuse me. All right, not seeing any other questions or comments from council?
Just,
Mayor Pro Tem Toms?
yeah, thank you. Thank you for the report. And I'm wondering if you can kind of earmark this for the next quarterly CIP report, so that we can, it can be highlighted and we can provide direction to do this. I understand that if we adopt and, we have to do the, procure a consultant to do the study, hold a public hearing to do an ordinance, and then the 30 days. It would be really nice if we could, on the effective date, have those speed limit signs installed, and it can take effect that day. So if we back up the calendar, we need to kind of get started.
Okay, thank you. We'll try.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Director Mishra, for your presentation. We'll look forward to the follow-ups from this conversation, as well as our next CIP update.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to item 8B2, which is from a presentation by the East Bay Municipal Utility District. I believe we have Director Chan available, or General Manager Chan available here. Is that virtually?
I'm here virtually, yes.
Okay, great. Good evening.
Good evening,
And
Mayor.
also, and also
Yeah.
Director McIntosh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you there as well. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
Good to see you guys.
Anyway, maybe I can begin right now. So again, good evening, Mayor and the council members. I am Clifford Chan, the General Manager for East Bay Mud, and I just want to thank you for having us here tonight. I met with your city manager, Andrew, last month, I believe, and he shared that you were interested in learning more about our long-term water supply plan, and in particular about our recycled water plan. We also discussed our earthquake preparedness and how we can work together to provide water to your residents and our customers after a major disaster. So I have a few staff here that I'll present tonight, as well as Director McIntosh, and I want to pass it on to Director McIntosh to make some introductory remarks.
Thank you, Clifford. You know, good evening, Mayor Murphy and members of the City Council. It's always an honor and a pleasure to come before you to provide you with an update on East Bay Mud issues. I'm Lisa McIntosh, your East Bay Mud Director for Ward 1, which encompasses primarily Richmond to Crockett. I share in my representation of the City of Hercules with Director Marguerite Young. It's been a while since I've come before you due to COVID and other health-related issues, but I am pleased to be here this evening with our staff to just give you an update on issues of importance to Pinole. So I will now turn it back over to our General Manager, Clifford Chan, to start the update.
And I don't know if someone can help pull up the presentation.
Give us 1 minute, General Manager Chan. We're getting the presentation ready. Thank you.
I believe that we were going to have you share your screen for the presentation. I don't know that we received it.
I think Ianad had the presentation. I don't know if she's a panelist and she was going to share the presentation.
Okay, let's double check because I do believe we had her on the list to promote.
The beauty of technology, huh?
I see her there, so we'll make sure she's promoted and she'll be able to go ahead and share her screen.
Great, thank you.
There she is.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, and excuse my camera. So as soon as you start the share screen, I can begin. Is it ready?
Can you share your screen, Ianad?
Let's see. Let me click here, and here we go. One moment. Can everyone see?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if you can go on to the next slide. Great, yeah, so again, tonight we're going to provide a high-level overview of our water supply planning, including our recycled water plan, as well as a plan to address emergency water distribution. If you can move on to the next slide. Maybe one more. Yeah, so I want to start with talking about where most of our water comes from. So 90% of our water that our customers use comes from the McCullough watershed, and that's that blue shaded region to the right of this figure. The water is stored in Pardee Reservoir and then travels 90 miles across the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta before it gets into our service area. Now, we also have 5 local reservoirs that provide the balance, most of the balance of our water supply, the 10% that our customers use. You may be familiar with some of those reservoirs. They include Briones, San Pablo, Lafayette, Upper San Leandro, and Chabot reservoirs. Now, in dry years, We can also take water off the Sacramento River at our Freeport Regional Water Facility. And that's kind of in the middle portion of that figure if you look up towards the top of the figure. Now, with the changing climate leading to more extreme weather, including longer and more severe droughts, we need to plan for a more resilient water supply. About 12 years ago, we completed our long-term water supply plan, what we called our water supply management program, that developed our water supply plan that looked out decades into the future. So I'd like to introduce Florence Weddington, who will talk about that plan.
Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Can we go to the next slide, please? So to plan for our reliable long-term water supply, East Bay Med has been developing a water supply portfolio approach. And the strategy behind that is that we can build a resilient and sustainable water supply through diversifying our water supply portfolio. And as you can see from the figure, there are to the right, there are 6 main elements to our water supply portfolio. Starting with water conservation, we have a goal of conserving 70 million gallons per day by the year 2050. Recycled water is another element of that portfolio, and we have a goal of providing up to 20 million gallons per day by the year 2040. And then groundwater storage is another part of that portfolio, and we are looking to have sustainable management of our groundwater storage supply. We also rely on regional partnerships where we have built interties between us and other entities, nearby entities, and we cooperate with them as necessary. And then storage is also a big part of our portfolio, and we are looking to store up to 30,000 acre feet per year, 30,000 acre feet by the year 2030, and the Los Vaqueros Reservoir is part of that expansion project. And then Clifford mentioned our Freeport facilities when you were looking at the prior map. So we purchase water and we can transport it into our system through our Freeport facilities. Next slide, please. So I want to just drill down a little bit and talk about our current recycled water program. So we currently have 5 non-potable projects that are operating right now. And we have the production capacity of 9 million gallons per day with a goal of 20 million gallons per day by the year 2040. So if you do the quick math, you can see we need another 11 million gallons per day to reach our goal. So we'll have future projects that we're looking into where we can do that. And that we anticipate that those projects will cost us about $343 million to get that additional 11 million gallons per day. And to date, we've invested about $145 million, and that includes state, federal, and private funding. Next slide, please. So in 2019, we updated our recycled water plan. And as part of that plan, it was recommended that we expand 3 of our existing projects. And if you look at the map, you can see down below, we have, starting at Ware in North Richmond, it was recommended that we can expand that project. And those 2 facilities serve the Chevron refinery. Where it was also recommended that we expand our Derwa San Ramon Valley recycled water project. We've completed phases 1 and 2, and we're looking to expand for phases 3 through 5. And then finally, it was recommended that we expand our East Bay Shore project through phase 2. And those projects, they are for irrigation, industrial uses, and other non-potable applications. And then for the future, the plan recommended that we look at some satellite opportunities. Next slide, please. So that was 5 years ago when we completed that plan. We're currently in the process of updating that strategic plan, and we are scheduled to complete it in September of 2024. We just had the kickoff last month. And as part of that plan, we will be reviewing existing projects and some future projects, including opportunities in Pinole, Hercules, and Rodeo areas. And then this strategic plan will also evaluate our potable reuse options district-wide. So we're really looking forward to completing that plan and looking forward to sharing the results of that with you when it is available. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to David Woodard, and he will give you some information on East Bay MUD's emergency planning.
And Clifford, just to be clear for the city council, your Pinole city manager wanted more information about our emergency planning.
Yeah, we talked about emergency water supplies and how we can provide water to the customer. So that's why we're sharing this portion as well. Is Dave Woodard here? If not, I can cover this via nod. So one of the things that we've been working on for many, many years is how we can prepare and respond to an emergency. The biggest emergency that we're looking at to respond to is the earthquake. After the earthquake, we expect that several thousand of our pipes will break, and that will impact water service to our customers. Our repair plan really is focusing on the largest pipelines first before we get to the smaller pipelines that delivers water to our customers. So it's going to be very important for all of our residents to be prepared at home. And we recommend 2 gallons per day per resident for 7 days. And of course, don't forget your pets. Now that plan means that you will have enough water to bring you through to the point where you can get access to more water. We may or may not be able to get to a particular neighborhood or residents right after the earthquake. Most likely, it could take weeks to months before we get to that area to repair the water pipes to people's homes. If you go to the next slide.
And if you can hear me, David Woodard said he's in the space waiting to be promoted as a panelist, but we can continue. But if you can find him, that'll be great.
He has been promoted. He's ready for presentation.
Okay. Well, why don't we just go to the next slide? So one of the ideas, now we do know that after the emergency that, Cal OES, the cities, FEMA will all develop points of distribution as working with the county and the state. And we want to coordinate with all those groups to help provide water to your residents and again, our customers. One of the tools that has been successful in many other locations is to develop these points of distribution, in particular, having these manifolds that we connect to our fire hydrants that customers come and get water. We started reaching out to the city of Richmond, and then we met with Supervisor Joya, who felt, and we agree, it would be good to coordinate with Contra Costa County and then working with all the various cities to identify points of distribution. We would work with the communities, in your city as well, to find where you think there's a good location. And we would also talk about, this is an area where we believe that we have a pipeline that can survive after a major earthquake. And so we'd like to work with the cities as well as the counties to identify those locations so that we can build these points of distribution so that the customers will have access to water after an earthquake. Go ahead, if you go to the next slide. Now, the idea behind these manifolds is that we would build, we would store, we would maintain these devices, and after an earthquake, we would deliver and help set up these manifolds, and that the community would then monitor and provide security to actually deliver the water to the customers. We came up with this plan because we think it's important for us to make sure that these manifolds and the hydrants are set up properly so that the water that the customers get, are maintained such that we can maintain water quality. As we work with the various cities and counties, again, we're looking for your input on these plans, in particular on the locations and how we can exercise these manifolds and do our preparedness programs to make sure that after the earthquake, we're all prepared and we understand what each other will be doing. Before we go on to the next slide, Dave Woodard, if you're on the line, if you want to add anything else.
Here we go. I am here.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, Dave?
Camera here on, sorry. No, just that we are working on this and have our design. We are building these. We're going to store them in strategic locations across our district. And, as Clifford mentioned, want to work with the various cities and counties of proper locations. If you've already identified a point of distribution for blankets, soup cans, everything else you might want to pass out in the event of an emergency, and you've already thought out traffic flows and security for that area and logistics, and if there's a fire hydrant that available in that area that makes sense, that's a perfect spot for something like this, and that's what we're trying to identify.
Thank you, Dave. And
Thanks.
if we can go to the last slide. So we can't have a presentation without talking about our customer assistance program and how we can help the customers most in need. We've had our customer assistance program since 1987. It is the most generous program in the state, and it can reduce our customers' water bill by up to 50%. The threshold for qualification is very high. So for example, a household of two, if you have a gross annual household income of around $59,000 or less, you would qualify for the program, and that dollar amount will increase depending on the number of residents in the household. I also just want to let you know that the state has a low-income household water affordability program that can provide up to $15,000 in financial relief for customers' water and wastewater bills for any arrearages that they've accrued during COVID-19. That program deadline is March 31st, 2024. And it is run out of the county, but we do have links to the LIWAP program on our website as well. We also have a Water Lifelines program, and you can scan this QR code where we provide financial assistance for customers in addition to our customer assistance program.
And Clifford, I would just like to add, when it comes to emergency planning and assistance, we also have agreements with Los Angeles County and Las Vegas to provide assistance to us if we have a catastrophic event here in Northern California. We have agreements with them, their assistance to come on board and assist. So I think that's important for everyone to know as well.
Yes, yeah. Thank you, Director McIntosh. Yeah, those agreements are in place because, if our resources are impacted, including staff, we can reach to other water agencies in and out of the state to help us make pipeline repairs and repair our infrastructure. So with that, maybe we can stop sharing and we can answer any questions that you may have.
Sure. Thank you for your presentation. We'll go to council for our questions. Are there any questions from council members? Mayor Pro Tem Thomas?
Yes, thank you for the report. I have a question regarding the emergency services. You mentioned that you would work with the city on identifying distribution points, and I understood that it would be via hydrants. Should we be looking at several sites? Because assuming that if we need to go to the point of having a service through hydrants at collection areas, that there's been damage within neighborhoods. And I'm just wondering if East Bay Mud would be able to inform us on where the newest distribution pipes and the least vulnerable infrastructure would be located. Should we be looking at several sites, Or is this also, would it also includes distribution via trucking in water?
That's where we want to work with the city as well as the county. We imagine that you've already identified areas where you would have points of distribution for lots of supplies, including water. If these locations need good ingress and egress, because you'll have people lined up to pick up supplies, including water. And so if you identify those locations that you think would be good for, that you've already identified as points of distribution, then we will work with you and find a location where we might be able to set up the manifold.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember Tate, and we'll go to Martinez at Rubin after.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Director McIntosh and General Manager Chan. I have to say, through COVID and our most recent drought, there was a lot of concern in the community regarding reliability of the system, water delivery, and I just wanted to see, or if you could speak a little bit to the major projects that are going on within West County, and any projects that you foresee in Pinole. And if you could speak a little bit to the reliability of the system that we have currently. You mentioned seismic concerns and other emergency planning, but what is the district doing to help address the current system to make it more, I wouldn't say more robust, to handle those emergency systems? It seems like the current plan is more reactive to an emergency, which I think having that plan is important. But as far as the system goes, I don't think it's any secret that it's an old system and it's brittle. And so I'm just wondering if you could speak to those 3 points. Any major projects specific to Pinole, and then what is the district doing for reliability of the system?
Yeah, so back in the 90s, we started our seismic improvement program that upgraded many of the drinking water tanks and facilities that provides reliable water supply. I mean, this was one of the largest investments, if not the largest investment at the time amongst any water agency. Since then, we have, over the last decade, been replacing many of the distribution pipelines. Last year, we were up to 22.5 miles per year. We do target the most vulnerable pipelines. We're also doing lots of testing and putting in earthquake resilient pipe. And some of that testing is actually happening nearby at our Richmond Field Station in conjunction with UC Berkeley. So we are very proactively replacing a lot of the pipe with earthquake resistant pipe, as well as our major transmission mains. So one of the major pipelines that goes up towards and supplies water to your city and others, we have a project that we completed in Berkeley, one segment. We have another one that's going to be built in El Cerrito. We are also upgrading our water treatment plants. Sobrante Water Treatment Plant in El Sobrante has been upgraded to add additional treatment technology to deal with taste and odor issues. We're also building more capacity to deal with just general reliability so we can handle more capacity for emergency water supplies, droughts and earthquakes as well. As to your question of particular projects in Pinole, I maybe have to turn to Ianad if she knows anything in particular. I don't have that list in mind, but certainly if there's something, we can get that to you later.
Hi, this is Ianad. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
We have quarterly coordination meetings with the cities, and Pinole is one. And I believe our next meeting is in about a month or so. So I can definitely circle back with some updates of projects that we're working on. So what we do in the coordinating meetings, the city lets us know the projects that they're having. We reciprocate the same information and just make sure that we're coordinating, whether it's traffic controls or any paving and things of that nature. But in terms of more broader, larger projects, I definitely want to give you accurate information. So I'd like to look at the notes from our last coordinating meeting and circle back. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. I did have one other thing to add to those quarterly meetings. Just one data point that was of of interest to me, and a few of the constituents, especially as we're circling this conversation about recycled water. I know that East Bay Mud has a lot of recycled water projects going on. It just the discharge or the reduction in discharge to the bay. If there's cost savings just from a regulatory standpoint from the Stormwater Regional Water Quality Control Board, if there's any kind of savings that are had there along with the distribution of that recycled water for use, as if there is any benefit there that we might be missing in an analysis that we're doing.
I mean, there is benefit as we look at reducing the discharges into the bay as we deal with the nutrients. The nutrients issue, of course, is a challenging and a very expensive issue. We have shared with our board. I mean, if we had to go to full nutrient removal, it could be as much as a few $100 million for us to make those types of improvements. We are looking at other options that are less expensive because those costs would, of course, have to be passed off to our ratepayers. But any reduction in discharges will reduce your need to remove nutrients from your waste stream.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Martinez Rubin.
Thank you, General Manager Chan and Director McIntosh. Good to see you. I'm thinking about being at home and needing to communicate with someone in case of needing water because for X reason my pipes aren't working. So I have a couple of relationships as a homeowner or renter. I would have a relationship with EB Mud because I pay my bill every month. I also would have a relationship with my property management firm because somehow they communicate with me not so much or not so often with my city. Of course, these days it's every 10 years because of sewer lateral situation. So my point is, are you all working in thinking about points of distribution for tools, et cetera, to be able to access potable water, working with property management firms? I imagine there aren't that many in any given area, in any given city. So this really is a message or a request for both you, EB Mud, and our staff that in those coordinating meetings, perhaps if the relationships aren't there, to form them and continue developing them with property management firms who would have as an incentive to make certain that their either renters or owners on the properties that they manage are doing well. So thank you for considering that. Unless you already are doing so, working with those kinds of firms, let us know.
And, let me sort of interject here. Thank you for the question. But that's been an issue that I've had for years now because I've always lived in an HOA, a property managed development. And, for years, East Bay Mud did not do enough to reach out to those entities and those folks. It was only individual homeowners, but we've come a long way at the board's urging, and we're literally reaching out. I actually got excited not too long ago because I actually received from East Bay Mud a letter at my personal address. So we've come a long way working with management companies, and we have a ways to go, but let me just assure you, we've come a long way and we're working very diligently at this effort. So I hope Pinole is experiencing the same thing as we are in Richmond. And if you're not, please reach out to us and let us know.
Director McIntosh, specifically reach out and let you know what would be the kind of thing
are your management companies receiving information from East Bay Mud?
Thank you. Okay.
That they can pass along to the homeowners or renters.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sasai. Do you have any questions?
No questions, and thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you
Um,
very much for having us.
Of course, I have a few questions before you all go, and then I think we may have some public comments as well. Um, Again, thank you, General Manager Chan, for your presentation, as well as Director McIntosh. One of the things I want to give context to is that we did a survey in 2020, I believe, for our residents in Pinole. And one of the things that the survey mentioned was that climate action was one of the most important issues for our city. In particular, issues around the drought and water usage showed a huge interest from Pinole residents. I think that, some of the narrative may have changed after what was a bunch of rain this year, but I would say that I think many of our residents still understand that the drought is imminent and that water issues are imminent. Part of uh, Part of the challenges probably you've heard about today or is with the Colorado River, right? This conversation around how we actually um, share our resources, water resources. And one of the imperative actions we want to take as a council, or we've considered at least, was this pod program, the points of distribution program that you all have. Can you all, either city staff or you all, express where we are in that process? I mean, I know we've as a council perhaps have talked about that, but I'm just not sure where we actually are in closing out that MOU.
Dave Woodard, can you share where we are with working with the county and the various cities?
I can, yeah. We meet regularly with them. I forget the exact frequency, but we have, our focus was on the actual unit for last size, et cetera. And now we've got a system that'll work. And now we're moving more onto the MOU. So our focus for, I don't know, the last few months or so has really been on the units and how it might work. And now we're moving on to the MOU process.
Okay, where does that leave us in Pinole? That's what I'm a little unclear. David, you also broke up a little bit, so perhaps I didn't hear the answer, but
okay,
where does that leave us?
Yeah, so the counties, we're working at the OES level with the counties. And I guess that's a great question. Are they going to take it to the individual cities, or are we? As I said, we kind of were focusing more on the manifolds themselves, but we'll be reaching out to, hopefully everyone at some point.
Okay. Are there individual cities now currently in Contra Costa County with that are participating in the pod program or have a direct MOU with East Bay Mud?
Yeah, so there's two that were signed. They were signed pre-COVID, and we have signed MOUs with the city of Danville and with Pleasant Hill. And to be honest, now that the program has gone forward a little bit, we've thought it through a little more. Those probably need to be redone because those, I believe the way they're currently written was that we would give them the manifolds they would store. As we thought that through, that probably didn't make a lot of sense for a couple of reasons, one of which being the person who knew what they were is going to retire and move on, and the next person who comes by is not going to know what they are, and they're probably going to throw them out or who knows where they are. And we want to control installing them to make sure they're installed correctly, and we don't, someone doesn't mistakenly contaminate the system. That's a good system.
Dave, also, maybe when you meet with the county, can you ask specifically about the city of Pinole and working with them to set up a point of distribution?
Sure, we can do that.
Wonderful.
And if I may, Mayor, prior to my meeting with General Manager Chan, I met with David and some of the other emergency management staff at East Bay Mud a number of months ago to follow up on the council request to establish the points distribution MOU. That's what kind of started this conversation. And at that point, as David mentioned, they have some dated MOUs in place with a couple communities, but they were at the time of the discussion, sounds like maybe they've just turned the corner. They weren't entertaining creating new MOUs with any cities because they wanted to revisit the format that they'd used before. And as David mentioned, they were still working on some of the engineering of this piece of equipment they call the manifold. So it sounds like now you all are at the point of being prepared to enter new conversations about establishing new MOUs. And as David, you and your team and I discussed, and I discussed with General Manager Chan, we're very interested. We want to have the same agreements and access that some other communities do. I'm sure there are other communities like us in Contra Costa County. So looking forward to continuing that conversation.
Mhm. And then I know, of course, the focus is around emergency planning, and I'm guessing you all are all as interested as we are in having this done yesterday. What's the general time frame you all have in terms of making that this partnership happen between yourself, the county, and our cities? If you can give an estimate.
David, you want to answer that?
Sure, I'll take a shot at it. So, as you can imagine, there's lots of cities, lots of counties, lots of people in our district. And so now that we've got the manifold taken care of, we have a group called our Pipeline Training Academy. They're going to make these for us. It's good training for them. Also, we're going to get them made. So we're in the process of churning out the actual manifolds now. As I mentioned, now we're moving our focus to the MOUs. And, we're going to go as fast as we can. As I said, a lot of cities, a lot of people out there, MOUs have a certain, if legal gets involved on both sides, that delays the process. That's one of the things we ran into pre-COVID. To be honest with you, we had MOUs, we handed it to a city, it went up their chain of command and kind of got complicated real quick. So we're hoping we can, get them in a spot where it's simple and we don't run into the, administrative side of things, for lack of a better word, but we're going as quick as we can. This is nobody's full-time job, I will say, to get the we have emergency response staff, obviously, but we're working on it as quickly as we can.
Clifford, can you provide some sort of real estimate? Is it a year? Is it 2 years? Is it 3? Can you offer something, please?
Yeah, we'll provide some information. I would not be happy if it were 2 or 3 years, Director.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And then just the last thing I wanted to mention, because I heard from other council members, and I think this may be of interest to you all if you're you may already be working on it, but working with other agencies, I think is really critical around emergency planning. The first that I wanted to note is that MCE Clean Energy, we've allocated a $1.5 million resiliency fund that we've now doubled in efforts to really address climate resiliency and emergency planning as well. One of the programs that we've used some of that funding for is to provide residents who are medically vulnerable with battery storage units. I'm interested in ensuring, especially those type of residents who may be vulnerable, how do we work with agencies like MCE as a way to overlap services, right? Especially as it relates to emergency planning. Is that something your team is already working on? Are you working with agencies? You mentioned water agencies in Los Angeles County and Nevada, but I was wondering if you're working with electricity companies, perhaps even Recycle More. You talked a little bit about the need to reach management companies and larger companies. I know multifamily housing, that type of thing. Recycle More has done a lot of work around composting with those groups. Have you all considered, or is there a team of folks or staff who are working on overlapping some of this emergency planning with those two entities specifically, or others?
Yeah, I mean, certainly as part of our emergency planning, we do work with the local power agencies to make sure that we have reliable power supplies, to make sure that we can operate our facilities. Where they can't guarantee a reliable water supply, we have our own backup power supply to make sure that we can supply power. We will also work with the local refineries to make sure that we can get access to fuel, because without the fuel, we can't run any of our equipment, to do any sort of pipeline repair or any other kind of work that we have. As well, we are working to develop our own power supplies. Some of it will help us be independent from the grid. Most of it, will not, without the battery storage. We are looking at a battery storage facility in Oakland, right near the Oakland Coliseum at our Oakport facility. So there's a number of projects that we're working on to build a little more reliability, both for East Bay Mud as well as regionally.
Thank you. And anything on customer management or customer relations that maybe you all are considering working and partnering with some of these agencies as well? I know you mentioned those groups, but wondering
Yeah,
if you...
we do work with some of the larger facilities, in particular hospitals and others, where they can have access to, different water lines in the street so that they can have a little more reliability. We do work with those agencies or those companies to improve the reliability. I mean, we can't guarantee that there will be water supply, but where they can access supplies from multiple water supplies, we'll do that.
Great. Thank you again. I'll go to our city clerk to ask if there's any public comments on this presentation.
Yes, thank you. In person, Rafael Menes.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, staff, distinguished guests from EB Mud, and members of the public. My name is Rafael Menes. I'm a resident of Pinole, and I have 4 questions on this item. First off, sort of going backwards in time through the presentation, I noticed that you mentioned there were potentially fuel issues with regards to your equipment in the aftermath of a disaster. Has EB Mud considered electrification of its equipment to the extent feasible so that they wouldn't be bottlenecked by fuel supply chain issues in the event of a major disaster? Secondly, with regards to pipelines, we've recently had another example of the raw devastation that wildfires can cause by the wildfires in Maui and Lahaina, burning entire communities to the ground, including the pipelines. How many of EB Mud's pipelines and or the new restored pipelines that you're installing are made of potentially hazardous materials if they're melted down, like PVCs and so on, and how many of them are made of less hazardous materials? I know you're not going to have an exact answer, but like 30%, 50%, that sort of thing. Thirdly, with regards to the emergency recommendation for a ongoing storage of 2 gallons of water per household member and a 7-day supply for each person, so that would be effectively speaking 14 gallons for a 1-person household and scaling up rapidly from there, 28 gallons for 2-person, etc. How feasible is that storage maintenance in practice? Just getting and maintaining a long-term storage safe container, changing out the water, I guess, probably yearly, depending on the source of water that you've got, and getting potable water that's not going to off-gas or decay over that time period. Is that actually a feasible thing to expect of most of the public, that they store that much water for that long a time frame and keep it maintained, even if it is to offset the reasonable amount of time that EB Mud would require to get service back online in a best case scenario? And finally, with regards to the manifolds, I admit I probably didn't understand something, but from what I understood from the presentation, it sounded like the manifolds were basically a bunch of pipes that would get hooked into fire hydrants in the event of a water distribution system breakdown. But I feel like I missed something or it was unclear, because there was a lot of discussion about who would have control over the manifolds, where they would be stored, how they would be used. But I don't think I'm quite seeing where a bunch of pipes makes the link between point source and reconnected to the broader network. Thank you.
Yep. So just quickly on the manifolds would be an area where residents can go to. Just think of it like a bunch of hose bibs that you can get water from and fill containers up if you need water. As far as the portable storage, it's very doable. I have personally 7-gallon containers, 7.5-gallon containers for my home, and I just have a reminder. My reminder is whenever I have to change the battery on my smoke detector, I change the water supply. I also carry, I have the ability to disinfect the water with chlorine tablets, as well as boil the water. And you can find all this information on our website on how you can maintain that water supply. As far as our pipes, I just, in very rough numbers, right now, about a third of our pipes are cast iron, a third are steel, and a third are asbestos cement. Our standard material that we're using to replace our pipes today is ductile iron pipe. As far as the electrification of the fleet, one of the challenges we have is a lot of the equipment that we have, you cannot buy electric equipment. There is, of course, the concern today that the electric grid isn't terribly reliable. We know that the state is working on this, and this will change going forward into the future. So there's a number of factors of why we haven't completely electrified the fleet. I would say the primary reason today is we can't buy the heavy equipment and the medium duty equipment that we need that's electric or hydrogen or anything that might be a zero emission vehicle. CARB has put out new rules that is pushing utilities like East Bay Mud to move towards zero emission vehicles. But right now that equipment doesn't exist. And we are concerned about the reliability of the grid, especially after an emergency. If we can't charge the vehicles, we won't be able to do any repairs. And it's easier to ship in fuel from outside our service area than to try to bring in electricity. So there's a number of factors that make that last question or that first question you had challenging. But we're certain that working with the state and with the various agencies that this will get fixed in the decades coming.
Thank you so much. Are there any other public comments?
Yes, we have one online.
Yes. Last four numbers 5748. Sir, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, yes, my name is AJ Vosbrink, and I'm a longtime resident of Pinole, and I had a few questions and comments. With the recent bad publicity or facts that several wastewater treatment plants in the East Bay area ended up having to dump excess volumes of treated or untreated properly water into our bay, causing like a red tide onset of E. coli or salmonella infections, and they said it was related directly to untreated waste from wastewater treatment plants. Did the East Bay Mud people have a hand in that with diverting too much water during the heavy meltdowns from the recent rain and snowstorms? And or do you hold each other accountable with the wastewater treatment plants because it was killing the wildlife, the fish, and poisoning people in and around several beaches throughout the Bay Area? Secondly, if you're going to eventually ask us to use treatable wastewater for drinking water purposes, aside from other things, do you have a better estimate or idea of how much of that water is going to be coming to Contra Costa or West Contra Costa County, and when that could be? And being we have our own wastewater treatment plant in the front or backyard here, will we benefit from that? Having some kind of a pipeline or manifold set up in that regard, so we can give some taxpayers some relief on our water bills and our wastewater treatment taxes as well. And lastly, with regard to what happened in Lahaina and parts of Maui, which is a sad state of affairs, and I would ask to dedicate the last minute or two of this meeting to those poor people and families in the islands.
Sir, you have 45 seconds.
That they had electrical pump problems because the power lines were down. So do you coordinate that with PG&E and keep in touch with situations like that? So we know, because I live on a hill and you got to power the water up and down the hill and throughout the system with electrical power grids. Thank you.
So I'll just quickly answer a few of the questions. I'll have Florence answer the question about the recycled water. As far as the power outages, I mean, I think we've all experienced in the last several years, PG&E has their public safety power shutoffs. We have not been immune to those power shutoffs. However, we can say that we have been working with PG&E. We do have the backup power. And even though we lost power to many of our facilities, we never had an issue delivering water to our customers. And a lot goes to that coordination that we do with PG&E. As far as the nutrients, you referred to the wet weather period. That's not the time where there's an issue with nutrients into the bay where you have the red tides. I will share with you in January 1st, December 31st of last year, our normal flow into our wastewater plant is around 50 million gallons per day. During that 1 to 2 day period, we saw it go from 50 million gallons per day to around 650 million gallons per day. That remaining 600 million gallons per day is from all the infiltration into the sewer lines. That's really the sewer laterals from people's homes as well as the city sewer lines. There is a consent decree that we are working and all the cities are a part of to reduce that infiltration and inflow. The nutrient issue that you're talking about that led to the red tide and the fish kills last summer, this is something that's affecting all wastewater discharges in the bay, which was a previous question of, what are we doing to reduce the nutrients? We have reduced the nutrient load into the bay consistently over a number of years, and we're continuing to work on reducing our nutrients. Florence, you want to respond to the question about recycled water?
Yes, sure, I would be happy to. Sorry, I can't get my video to turn on, but I will just say thank you for your question about recycled water. That is, it is something that we will be looking at in our upcoming strategic plan study. There are several things that we'll have to consider in terms of being able to provide that as part of our water supply. We'll be looking at just the feasibility, if we'll need to do collaborations with other agencies. We'll look at costs, and then we want to make sure that whatever options that would be available to us, they would be able to serve our entire service area. So there's lots of things that we're considering when we are determining if that's the way that the district would like to move forward in terms of adding recycled water to our water supply. The state has just released draft regulations for how the water would need to be treated to make sure that it's at a level that is safe for everyone to drink. And so those regulations won't be finalized until the end of this year. So that's something else that we'll be looking at is what are those requirements that would be necessary? Is it feasible for us to build a project that meets the regulatory standards? And is it cost effective for us to do that?
All right, thank you so much. Are there any other public comments on this item?
But Mayor, I would like to just sort of interject here again. So East Bay Mud is a public agency and our meetings are public. So I urge the public, the council, the public, staff, everyone to just participate in our meetings the second and fourth Tuesdays of each month. We have a planning committee meeting. We have a legislative human relations committee. We have a finance committee, and we have our regular board meeting. And it advises the public of everything we're doing, trying, and promoting. So please reach out and just come aboard and share in our meetings so you can be fully informed.
Thank you so much. Any other final words, Director McIntosh or Mr. Chan?
No, it's just been a pleasure to be here as always. And the questions I love because they're getting more and more technical, because with climate change and water and our precious resources, people are really concerned, and rightly so. And we're here to just support our constituents and our public. And if there are questions, we're always here to help.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you for joining us virtually. We look forward to partnering together more. Have a
Absolutely.
great night.
Bye-bye.
Well,
All right, that brings us to our next item, which is item number 7. We're going a bit backwards. We'll go to consent calendar after that. That's reports and communications, and I'll start with my mayor's report. Once again, good evening, and also happy new school year to everybody. I want to send some love and special wishes to our students, our teachers, and our school employees on this first day of school, as West Contra Costa Unified, as well as many other school districts across California, start back up. And of course, want to encourage our school communities to learn as much as you can and keep those lessons with you all of your life. All the best wishes to you. And if our city can be of support, please let us know. Want to also remind residents about the start and launch of our Parks Master Plan. The Parks Master Plan project is now underway. For those of you who have provided feedback to us via public comment, have visibly exciting new ideas for how our parks um, uh, can be improved, you are the people we want to hear from. And we have now launched our website at PinoleParksMasterPlan.com, which will be continuously updated through the planning process so that you can learn more about updates about the Parks Master Plan that we are creating, but also that at some point you can be a part of making sure that that master plan is inclusive of all of your needs, concerns, thoughts, and exciting ideas. Right now, we are seeking communities' input about the parks, and you can find a survey on that website, PinoleParksMasterPlan.com. Of course, your feedback and participation are also crucial to the success of this project, but we also need ambassadors. We need folks in the community who are reaching out to new people in our community so that this entire project and plan can be successful. So again, please share out our website at PinoleParksMasterPlan.com and let us know ways of which we can continue to engage our residents in improving our parks. A couple other things on the small business front in Pinole. I want to welcome the new business Pinole Pizza and Deli to our city. We have a new place at the Del Monte Center on San Pablo Avenue. Definitely always very exciting to get new businesses in Pinole. So welcome to our community, and we look forward to the grand opening, as well as all of an additional restaurant brings to Pinole. And hopefully, those of you who are excited about pizza or deli sandwiches will check out that storefront at Del Monte Center, right next to. Right next to the Embers, as well as several other locations. And then also just wanted to encourage residents and visitors, of course, on the small business front that Foster Freeze has cruise nights of summer. I know many of us are very familiar with the Pinole Car Show. If you're interested in continuing the exciting world of car shows or cool cars, they have Foster Freeze Cruise Nights of Summer. The first one was on July 30th. And the next 3 actually are very exciting because they're also themed. So each one of these events are on Sunday night at 4 p.m. at Foster Freeze on 993 San Pablo Avenue in Pinole. The next one is on Sunday, August 27th, and it's Throwback Night. That just means basically wear anything retro that you'd like to, and you can, of course, bring your family. The one after that is on Sunday, September 24th, and that's actually the 77th anniversary of Foster Freeze, and they're celebrating their anniversary that night again at 4 p.m. And then, of course, the last cruise nights of of summer is going to be a Halloween party on Sunday, October 29th. All of these are friendly events to attend. There are, of course, very, very, very cool cars, as well as live music, food, prizes, and raffles. So again, just want to encourage Pinole residents and visitors to check that out at Foster Freeze on San Pablo Avenue, and of course, bring your family. Um, Last but not least, just want to again encourage residents to read our fire prevention brochure that we have on our website, and know that our city is working with Con Fire to ensure that we are mitigating as much as possible and doing weed abatements as much as possible. We've worked with property owners as well in an agreement that enables a usage of the passage on Galbraith Road as an evacuation route in the event of an emergency. So if an emergency occurs there, such as a wildfire, the new gate on Galbraith road will be unlocked and opened by emergency personnel, allowing residents to drive through to safety on the other side. Of course, this benefits both Pinole residents and also Bronte residents. So just want to ensure that folks know that we are moving as a city to ensure we keep ourselves safe. And as we just talked about with water, emergency planning is at the top of our priority list. And last but not least, I think we had a public comment about it, but just want to send thoughts and prayers and encourage our residents to think about ways to support Maui right now. We've seen some really, really disastrous photos and triggering photos from families around wildfires that are happening now in Maui. So I just want to send our thoughts and prayers and also acknowledge that there are ways to support. I know former President Obama today also listed out a number of organizations as he was born and raised in Hawaii that folks can support. So if you are someone who is looking to support and take action, just want to again support you in doing that and send our love to our fellow Americans in that state. So that being said, again, thank you all so much for all of our city staff, for all of you all are holding. It's been a pretty exciting summer. And as we continue on summer, I know we have a couple more events, but it's been a very, very exciting summer for Pinole and looking forward to what the school year brings to us, because I know a lot of students are going to be out in our parks as well as families out in our community. So please stay safe. If possible, when driving, please watch out for our families. And take your time. It's okay to take your time. We want to make sure we stay safe with one another and keep our community as healthy and safe as possible. So that does conclude my mayor's report for this evening. And next we'll go to mayor and council appointments, which there are none tonight. So we'll go to city council committee reports, and I'll start with Councilmember Sasai.
Thank you, Mayor Murphy. I was happy to attend the August 10th meeting for the West Cat Board of Directors. And the most notable item that we addressed was the Clipper Start pilot extension and adjustment of the fare discount. And our board unanimously voted to approve the change in the Clipper Start discount from 20% to 50%. Also, one thing that I brought up on our West Cat board that I'll also bring up here because I believe it's important enough to restate. And it's that about a month ago, the California Attorney General's office released a 2022 hate crime in California data report. And the hard truth is that we experienced a 20.2% increase in hate crimes from 2021 to 2022. Hate crimes targeting Black individuals increased by 27.1%. Anti-LGBTQ hate crimes increased by 28.4%. And anti-Semitic hate crimes increased by 24.3%. And as we know, those who live in the intersection of those identities are at higher risk. So alongside West Cat General Manager Rob Thompson and one of our planning commissioners, Chrissy Lam Julian, I had the great opportunity to meet with some of the folks from the California Civil Rights Department who are leading the California versus Hate initiative, which is an initiative funded by Governor Newsom's office. And it provides a hate crime reporting system through an online portal and a hotline, which is accessible in several different languages, but also provides culturally competent resources for victims of hate crimes, as well as custom infographics and posters that local governments, public transit agencies can use to increase access to their resources. I'm very proud to say that through consensus, we were able to advance this discussion through the West Cat Board of Directors. So thank you for your support on that. And it's also critical that we are proactive about this issue on public transit, but also citywide, because this is a problem that unfortunately is worsening in our state, but also our backyard. So this is an issue that I've been meeting with our community and stakeholders to address, and I intend on advancing the discussion about this on our council. And also lastly, a resident of Pinole Shores reached out to me recently about the collapsed portion of our Bay Trail. And I had the opportunity to walk down to the location with her to discuss the issue. In the hour or so that I spent next to that location, I observed multiple people walking, running, and biking go past the temporary fencing and traverse the impassable area into the side portion where there are large rocks, and even carry their bikes past those areas, even though it's incredibly dangerous to do so and we're warned not to. So these are definitely concerns that we should be reaching out to East Bay Regional Park District about. I personally reached out to Dr. Eccles, but also look forward to having a presentation from our district come to our council and having the opportunity to ask them questions and also ask them about resolving some of these issues and how our city can help accelerate some solutions. And that's all for my council report.
Thank you, Councilor Sasai. We'll go to Councilor Martinez-Rubin.
Thank you. Since we last met, there were a number of meetings that I attended of the subcommittee that is discussing updates to the city seal and logo, along with Councilmember Sasai and Assistant to City Manager Murray. Got together on the 27th and on August 9th. And as well, I got to speak to the different vendors as well as visitors to Pinole who participated at the crafts fair at the Senior Center held on July 29th to invite them to provide input to that update, and either by visiting our website or directly completing forms about that. It's reassuring to see that the more outreach and individual conversations we have with community members, the greater awareness and or increased knowledge they have about why it is that there are certain activities that we do as council members. So I got to witness some of that and also to obtain some useful input. I also attended the Cal City's East Bay Division meeting that was held in Pittsburgh on July 27th, as well as the mayor's conference that was held in Lafayette. And in both of those meetings, there were presenters who talked about about homelessness and housing. At the East Bay Division meeting, it was senior advisor to Governor Newsom, Hafsa, and I'm going to mispronounce her name, but I'll spell it Kaka, who gave an overview of her role and invited city officials and city staff to have to consider her a resource for increased information about the available projects and or funding. However, to whatever degree they exist. So her work has started in among other cities and facing greater homelessness, or perhaps not greater, but it is very obvious that in larger urban areas like Los Angeles County, where she came from, she got to experience working with homelessness there, and now is taking that experience to inform the activities on which she advises cities and governor's office about trying to alleviate that. And at the mayor's conference, it was Supervisor Joya as well as the mayor of El Cerrito, who gave an overview of the different funding sources that exist to address housing issues, with also presenting some information that had us notice that there may be a greater number of people at risk of homelessness than we are aware of simply by the point in time count that is held once a year. Not surprising. Also, however, not surprising is that the monetary sources, federal and or state sources, are really more available to cities with hundreds of thousands of people in their population, which means that the smaller cities then work more productively when they work regionally. And I think that's some of the activity or efforts that we have been seeing here in Pinole, and more news to come about that, I'm certain, from staff. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go to Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
Sure, thank you. I also attended the WestCat meeting last week, and Council Member Sasai already gave an update on the Clipper Card program, the discount, and we will be working on helping to market that once that's in place. The other issue regarding WestCat is that there is always a risk for reduced funding, especially for the BART Express bus. This is a bus that, back in the 70s when BART first started, it didn't come all the way up to Pinole and Hercules, but our consolation prize was that we got bus service in lieu of. And BART right now is looking at reducing that budget. So we are going to be discussing that instead of waiting till April and May till it's a crisis for the next fiscal year. We're actually discussing that now because even though there's a Band-Aid for this fiscal year, We don't know about going forward. So that's a big item. The other item that we discussed was regarding the drivers union. The drivers are contracted to Westcat, and they're currently in labor negotiations and going through mediation at this point. So we're hoping that there is a settlement so that there won't be any interruptions in service. And that's the end of my report.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Toms. Next, we'll go to item 7D, which is for council requests for future agenda items. We'll start with Council Member Sasai. Do you have any? Did you not? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Welcome back, everybody. Councilmember Tave, that is my
I could say
apologies.
no worries, Mr. Mayor. I could. The best part about going last is that mostly everything's been talked about. There's just one thing I wanted to highlight about BART has new runtime hours. Starting August 2nd, BART will had expanded their service hours significantly to increase service and increase ridership. The service is 5 a.m. to 12 a.m. On weekday service, and it was currently 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. So it's going to be increasing to 5 a.m. to 12 a.m. So that's kind of those pre-pandemic hours again. Also, the frequencies on all lines from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. and they'll have 30-minute frequencies from 8 p.m. to midnight. The other thing I wanted to bring out was during the time that we were kind of on break, the goats got out up at Shea Drive. A lot of the reports came out that they ran amok and they were all over the place, and terms like swarmed and all it wasn't as bad, but a few children who were off school actually got out and had a free petting zoo with the goats and stuff. So we got it under control, but as the mayor said, that was more of a fire prevention measure that we were implementing, and just wanted everybody to be aware that if you do see them, I think a couple got on the freeway a couple times as part of the process, and I'm hoping the city manager might be able to. I don't know if that was Caltrans or the city that were but I think in the community, people were asking, how do they get out and stuff like that. But I just want to thank Pinole PD for handling that odd situation of goats getting out. But I think it was one herder and a couple dogs that got them all back in. So I just wanted to make sure that we commented on that, and that was more of a fire prevention measure. It wasn't too much of and grazing, I guess. So it benefited the goats as well. But on the news, it was just kind of swarmed and took over and stuff like that. So I'm hoping that we can continue that program in other areas in Pinole as well. So I just wanted to touch on that. Everything else has pretty much been covered. So thank you.
Of course, thank you. Before we go on to the next item 7D, I just asked the city clerk if we have any public comments on 7A, B, or C.
Thank you. I think we do have an online comment.
Yes, we do have one online, Cordell Hindler. Mr. Hindler, are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to say my comments for 7D. I have some items for future agendas, so I'll just my comments.
That sounds great, Mr. Hendler. We'll come back to you after. Are there any other public comments on 7A through C?
No other comments.
Okay, then
No
we'll go to
comment.
7D. I'll start with Councilmember Tave because I notably forgot about you.
No future agenda items.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Martinez Rubin.
Good news about the goats. EBMA uses them as well. Yeah. Okay. Goats aside, a request for a future agenda item is that we get a brief report, an overview about the Classic Car Show from the Classic Car Show Committee, as well as a brief presentation about to whom they will be making donations that they ordinarily make from proceeds of that car show. So if we can have that presentation at the September 5th meeting would be my request.
All right, I'll second that. Are there any questions about the motion? Great. City Clerk Bell, will you call the roll?
Thank you. Councilmember Martinez Rubin.
Yes.
Councilmember Tave.
Yes.
Councilmember Sasai.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Toms. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Martinez Rubin. Any other items?
Thank you. That's it for now.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
No items.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Sasai.
Yes, I'd like to request a presentation from the California versus Hate Initiative.
I missed that part. Can you repeat it?
Sorry, I'd like to request a presentation from the California versus Hate Initiative.
California versus Hate Initiative. Gotcha. And is that out of the Attorney General's office? Is that what you mentioned earlier?
That is out of the California Civil Rights Department.
Okay. Great. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, great. Any questions on it? City Clerk Bell?
Thank you. Councilmember Martinez Rubin.
Yes.
Councilmember Tave.
Yes.
Councilmember Sasai.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Councilor Society, other items?
That's all. Thank you.
Okay, I have none. And so we'll go to public comment for 7D.
Okay, we'll go back to Cordell Hindler.
Can you? Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Good evening. Good Mayor, Council. My name is Cordell Henler. I had 3 items of requests to be put on the October agenda. So, number 1 is to receive a presentation from Supervisor Joya and Lisa Motoyama in regarding the study that is being done on addressing of homelessness, because it is a very big issue in not only in Pinole but other parts of the county. So that's 1. Number 2 is an agenda item that I'm bringing forward is this is something to consider. For October is something that is very dear to me personally and also in my family. Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So I'm hoping that this will be put on the October agenda, because we want to provide a proclamation for women that have gone through breast cancer. Not only women, but men also go through breast cancer too. So number 2, that's 2. And then the third item is to receive a presentation from Danny Wan or designee to provide a presentation on the Port of Oakland on what plans that they have, what kind of plans that they're working on as they relapsing from the pandemic. So I'm hoping that all 3 of those items will be placed on the October's agenda.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other public comments?
No other comments.
No, no comments.
Thank you.
If I can respond to the Breast Cancer Awareness Month is already on the agenda for October.
Just a verbal yes, just for folks.
I'm looking, I don't see it on our planner. We'll double check the list, but I think it's already listed in our annual.
Thank you, City Clerk Bell. Great. So we'll move on to item 7E, which is our city manager's report. Good evening, City Manager Murray.
Good evening, everyone. I want to provide a quick preview of items that we're anticipating for the next council meeting, which will be on September 5th. They include a presentation from Confire on how things are going with our new fire service model, a number of proclamations. We are expecting a recommendation from the Memorial Subcommittee regarding the designation of memorial. We'll receive information on HCD's pro-housing designation program. We're expecting to have a discussion of the potential updates to the city council meeting procedures. We had 2 items that we thought might be on tonight's agenda, but needed to be deferred for a little additional work, and that's background information on a commercial cannabis tax, as well as background information on a vacant parcel tax. And finally, we're expecting to recommend the award of contracts to 2 firms to provide grant research, writing, and administration services to the city. Quickly on the matter of goats, those weren't city goats, but you may have noticed goats, as was mentioned, East Bay Mud uses them. There were some down near the creek earlier this week by Collins Elementary, you might have noticed. Former Fire Chief Winecoop had investigated securing some goats to do the fire fuel mitigation that we do mechanically. Otherwise, we weren't able to secure them, but we're still open to that possibility. We're also procuring other mechanical equipment that'll help treat some of the hillsides. We're doing much more fire fuel mitigation on city-owned property, including our open spaces, and goats would be an option. So yes, happy to. Yes, the news coverage made it appear as though it were more dramatic and exciting than it really was. But goats are a new and very effective way to do fuel mitigation, so expect to see more of them around. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. And we'll go next to our last room report, our city attorney's report. City Attorney Casher, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Murphy. So just briefly wanted to mention that we do have a municipal code update subcommittee meeting this Monday, and we'll be discussing updates to this single-use plastics ordinance. There's been a lot of really good work done by Director Whalen and our sustainability fellow Kapil. So those updates will come to the subcommittee so that we could hopefully advance that ordinance forward for council consideration. We'll also be talking about some updates to the municipal code related to EV charging station usage restrictions, some language around our panhandling ordinance. And then I also wanted to mention that the municipal code updates subcommittee has already kind of moved forward an update to our campaign sign ordinance. That's going to our planning commission because it's a zoning code amendment. So it'll be going to the planning commission, I think either this month, the next planning commission meeting, and then that will come to the city council for consideration once approved by the planning commission. And that concludes my report.
Great. Thank you, City Attorney Casher. City Clerk Bell, are there any public comments on items 7E or 7F?
We do have one online. We have telephone caller, last four numbers, 5748. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I had two items. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Yes. Anyway, I guess I just couldn't get through with the presentations made for 7C for the future items or future agenda items. I wanted to bring up again are we having a police department report by Chief Neil Gang within the next 1 or 2 months to give us the update status going back so many years, so he can put that up on a nice visual screen so we all can read it with regard to the number of citations, pre-COVID, post-COVID, etc., for a 5-year period, so we can tie that into the traffic and speed study. And I think his presentation is long overdue that he and/or Lieutenant Avery said they were going to make. So you could please verify that and bring back. The other one is with the animal shelter. The animal shelter in Pinole and Martinez or lack of. Can we have the director of animal control in Martinez, Beth Ward, come out and give a presentation on the increase in taxes, as well as what's happening with the vacant Farrell's property in Pinole, Fix-It Farrell's property, because it's been vacant almost a year now with the new owner in there, and there's just some placard sign saying soon to come. But Supervisor Joya said it's not going to really be a nonprofit per se, because they're price gouging people in other locations throughout the country and Bay Area. So that presentation can be tied in with the animal shelter people. And lastly,
Sir, you have 45 seconds.
Lastly, I agree with Mr. Tave about the goats. I like that, and I think Caltrans didn't have enough supervision out there, and they had one herder and one dog or two, and they didn't have good fencing and a block off, so it got into some of the Terra Hill neighborhood or something. But can we ask the city manager if they're going to use the goats or the Public Works Department to clean up the exterior of the wastewater treatment plant? Thank you.
All right. Are there any other public comments on items 7D or E
No other comments.
or F? Okay, thank you. Great. So we'll continue on with our meeting agenda for item number 9, which is our consent calendar. I'll ask the city clerk if we have any public comments for the consent calendar.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We have 2 cards. One is from Ana Avila for item 9I, and the other is Rafael Menez for items 9C, I, and 9E.
Great. If you either of you will step to the podium and make your public comment. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm here on behalf of ASME 57 Local 1 Union as the president of our unit. I have Lisa Davis, our representative. I have Joanna Nunes, who is my new secretary treasurer in our unit. I wanted to express our sincere gratitude for our negotiation for our new 2-year contract, hopefully that will be approved on the consent calendar. It was a pleasure working together with the City of Pinole negotiation team, Greg Ramirez, Daisy Shell, Charlene Davis, and I thank each and every one of you who took part and heard our needs and the great outcome that we had for our unit. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next public comment.
It looks like just doing another check. Okay, just Rafael Menez in person.
Good evening again. So my comments for 9C and 9I largely overlap with one more particular to 9I. Let's see. For 9C on page number 84 of the agenda packet as not amended, I noted that the market equity adjustment for management analyst was 12 and 9/10%. For public works maintenance supervisor was 14 and 3/10%. And for recreation coordinator was 15 and 8/10%. It sounds like we've been underpaying those positions quite a bit. Had there been previous market equity adjustments done in the past decade, or was this the first time that the city had ever done that? And then jumping forward again to in 9I think, for on page number 460 of the unamended agenda, you have the accounting technician at 7%, the administrative assistant at 7.3%, community service officer at 17.2%, and police property specialist at 23.3% increases, apart from the increase in COLA of 4% and the longevity for C and the one-time lump sum for E of the other departments. Those all seem like pretty notable increases. I'm sure they're deserved because it's a market equity study, but I'm wondering how long it had been since there'd last been a market equity study, given the magnitude discussed there. Secondarily, I had a question about on page number 154, the regular work week amount of overtime earned, that sick leave and paid leave status for holidays would count towards overtime work rate. Is that ordinarily done? It seems unusual to me, but I don't know whether that's just the standard and it's just now being amended, or whether it's a new thing that was negotiated. And that goes over for 9C and 9E as well, I think, though I don't think I have the exact entry in it for 9E. And then on page number 561 in the unamended agenda packet, it's the cross-out list for a list of official holidays. This for 9I specifically, as opposed to 9C. I think there was an error in how the numbers were listed, because it shows 11/28/2023 instead of 11/24/2023 for the fourth Friday in November, and 11/29/2024 instead of, again, basically the days got mixed up. It was correct in the union proposal language and elsewhere, but it's not correct on that subpage. It's not correct in the updated agenda packet either. So I figured that should be noted. And I just decided to jump out of there. And then let's see, was that all that I had with regards to right. And then jumping back to item E, the response to the grand jury report on housing. I think there's a few comments I want to make there. On page number 269, the city's response to finding number 5, page 3 of 16 in the response to the grand jury report, it's noted as a partial disagreement to the many obstacles hinder the development of affordable housing at the local level, including XYZ. And it seems like that's a misinterpretation of the finding. It's not asking whether the city's taken steps to resolve those obstacles. It's just that finding's just stating that those obstacles actually exist. So I'm not sure why the city is doing a partial disagreement there, given that it's agreeing that those challenges exist and are in fact a problem because the city's taking steps to address them. I don't see why the city couldn't just say, we agree and we're taking these steps to address it, rather than a partial disagreement on that point. And then on page number 276, slash 275, grand jury recommendation 1, I note that the city's response is that the recommendation has been implemented because the community development department as a whole is responsible for reporting back on the implementation of the RHNA targets. But it seemed like recommendation 1 was talking more about a specific staff member being assigned with accountability for that. So it seems to be more that it's a partial disagreement rather than an fully implemented, unless the city desires to assign a particular staff member to have responsibility for that implementation, which it didn't seem like was the particular focus of that response. Finally, with regards to, there was a chart earlier on in the document, on page number 234, I believe, the unmodified one, it was table number 2, 2022, Contra Costa County wages, rent compared to income, and area median income status. I was wondering whether it would be possible to generate a table like that with City of Pinole data as opposed to countywide data, whether that information existed either through our economic development studies or through other information that the city has to supplement this report and to integrate its findings on a more local level and make them more actionable on a local level. And that's all my comments on the consent calendar for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Menez. There were a few questions that were mentioned. I was asking if staff have any responses to that.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond. And Director Shell, who's online, can add if she would like to the questions related to the labor MOUs. One of the questions was, when was the last time we did a market equity study? We do a total compensation benchmarking study every round of negotiations. So we would have done one 2 years ago. It doesn't always result in a change to the MOU that has targeted market increases. That's part of the negotiations process. But we've done them in my time here for every round of negotiations. It's important information for both teams to have. You asked about a question of the definition of hours worked for the purpose of overtime. That's a negotiated agreement on how that's defined. There are various external standards that we could tie to, but that's the result of some priorities expressed by the labor groups and the city council's willingness to meet them in the negotiations process. And finally, thank you for mentioning the issue regarding a possible incorrect date for the holiday. We'll take a look at that and make that change if that's correct. And then regarding the comments on the response to the civil grand jury, I believe Director Whalen is online and can respond to those.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. So I heard 3 questions. The first was with regard to finding number 5. I took a quick look at finding number 5. I believe that we partially recommended a partial disagreement response because these obstacles do exist. However, we partially disagree because we have taken steps to reduce those obstacles to provide affordable housing in our community. On recommendation 1 regarding who is assigned to ensure that the housing element is implemented, the Community Development Department is indicated in the response, and the director of the Community Development Department will be responsible for making sure that those annual reports get to the state. And then the third question regarding table number 2, I can look into that. I don't have an answer for you right now, but I can look into it.
Great. Thank you, Director Whalen. Are there any other public comments on the consent calendar?
No more public comments.
Okay, great. So we'll go back to council to request any or to see if any items need to be pulled. I would like to, before that, just make a motion to continue items 9D and E to the next meeting so that we can have more time to review those. But I request a second to that motion. 9D and E. Do you have a second to that motion?
Did we get any comments on 9D?
No, I'm requesting that be continued to the next item or to the next agenda.
I'll second.
I'll second that.
Okay. And that's just to review more time or to have more time to review those two items. Great. City Clerk Bell, did you, can you call the roll on that motion?
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Martinez Rubin.
Yes.
Councilmember Tave.
Just a question. You said D and E, correct?
9D and 9E, yeah.
Are there any I guess time restrictions to getting the grand jury, and will we make those time if we were to push to the next meeting? Just want to confirm.
It looks like Director Whalen is up. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, if I can respond. So the response to the grand jury, I believe, is due on the 13th of September, 13th or the 15th of September. So we have built in time here so that you can move it to the next agenda and have a conversation if you'd like on September 5th, or put it on consent for September 5th.
Wonderful.
So
Thank
there
you.
is time.
So yes, on the vote.
Thank you. Councilmember Sasai.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
Yes.
And Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Are there other items that folks would like to pull or motions to be made for the consent calendar? Councilmember Martinez Rubin.
I'd like to pull item 9A, 9B, and 9. Oh, that's it.
Okay. Any other items to be pulled for discussion? Councilor Sasai? Councilor Tate?
Not for me. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms?
No.
Okay. Back to you, Councilor Martinez Rubin.
Thank you.
For 9A.
Thank you. With regard to the minutes, 9A, on page 8 of 594 of the agenda packet, or page 3 of the July 18th minutes, third paragraph from the bottom of the page, there's reference to a meeting with that I met with a firm to discuss possible agreement, etc. I did not meet with a firm, so if you would please revise the sentence to read as follows. Also, with Councilmember Sasai and the assistant to the city manager, discuss a possible agreement with a firm to help the city update its seal and logo. The distinction being that neither I nor Councilmember Sasai met with a firm. We simply discussed an agreement with it. That's that. And then with item 9C, that's the warrants. So I'd like to understand a little bit better. I noticed that there is an overlap in dates when the warrants are paid. And so in reviewing last month's warrants report and this month's warrant report, I noticed some duplicates. It's not the first instance when that happens, but it was the first instance for me where I saw a figure that led me to ask or question why that practice is as it is. But more importantly, even still, because it's not the first report that has an overlap in the time period in which the warrants are presented. So how is it, the question is this, how is it that the city, and when is it that the city reconciles the warrants that are paid so that we have a more current balance or amount of funds used for the different payments that the city makes?
Is that a question for the city manager, Councilmember Martinez Rubin?
City manager, or if we can have a response from our finance director, if available, and we can also hold the question for future meeting because it's not the first instance. It's just my observation that there's an overlap in the dates when of the reports. In other words, I'll give you an example. And the figure that I noticed a month ago that also appears on this month's warrant report is the figure that's allotted for payment to Civic Plus regarding services related to the annual fee of agenda and minutes. And the reason it caught my eye is because the first time that I saw it, the brief description reads annual fee. So when I saw it again this month in the warrants report, I asked city manager, how many multiple annual fees do we have? In my mind, it's one, right? And then I more carefully read the warrant report and noticed that often there are overlaps in the dates when, not overlaps, but duplicate entries for dates when warrants are paid. As with that example, it appeared last month, it appears this month. Going even farther, closer to the beginning of the year, there are other warrant reports that the council has approved as part of the consent calendar that show something similar. In other words, there's one overlapping day of the month when in a subsequent month, the same payments may appear.
Thank you, Councilmember Martinez Rubin. So I will take a look at those, and would it be okay if I respond to your question via email or at the next meeting?
However, we could all know
Okay,
if that is
yes.
practice, and I think more importantly, how it affects our understanding of the balance of the budget. I can only compare it to a personal checking accounting where I want to make sure that if a payment is made, I don't have it appear in next month's accounting form or checkbook, et cetera. That's just my comparison. Thank you.
Sure, we'll take a look at the overlapping dates, but we do have standard processes that we follow in terms of reconciling payments with our bank reconciliations and also against the budget as well. But I will check on those overlapping dates.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Any other items or?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Were there other items that wanted to be pulled, Mayor Pro Tem
I
Tom?
just wanted to clarify that, these are not duplicate payments that are made, that they're just duplicate. They're showing up twice because they're on the cusp of a time period. So we can still move forward with the warrants. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. It's just another comparison that I have is that when we talk about either time periods or numerical, what are they called? I'm blanking on what it is that they call. In a statistical report, we don't do we make sure that figures aren't included in two sets of dates. And so that's why I wondered why we do. But again, more importantly is that we have mechanisms to reconcile so that we know the true balance of a budget. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, Councilmember Tave.
Just kind of speaking to that, is it have to do with the June and July, like the fiscal year overlap? For any reason why the cost would?
I think Director Guillory's behind you.
Oh, yeah. I was kind of.
There could be overlap between the fiscal years, but it sounds like in reports that were within the same fiscal year, there was some overlap in the dates as well. So I'll have to go back and research the reason for that.
Right, and it's just one day's difference, but it does have us take a look at just
Folks, let's have one person.
it affects
at the
the
dais
it
at once.
affects the totals on the report. Yeah.
Got it.
Right.
Thank you, Councilor Martinez Rubin. Um, did you all want to make a statement?
No, I'm
Okay.
ready to make a motion if
Got
there's.
you.
Okay, I'll move that we approve the consent calendar with the modification of page 8 on item 9A, and the consent calendar including 9A, B, C, F, G, H, I, and I.
Great. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
All right. City Clerk Bell, please call the roll.
Thank you. Councilmember Martinez Rubin.
Yes.
Councilmember Tate.
Yes.
Councilmember Sasai.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. Thank you. All right. That leads us to our next item on the agenda, which is item number 10, public hearings. And we have one public hearing this evening, which is the introduction and first reading of an ordinance amending the Pinole Municipal Code, Section 2.04200, Council Manager Relations, and Section 2.12.010, time of regular City Council meetings, consistent with the updated City Council meeting procedures. Again, this is a public hearing, and here to introduce the ordinance is City Attorney Casher. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, members of the public, staff, Eric Casher, City Attorney. I think the PowerPoint will be brought up shortly. We can get started. Great. Thank you. You could advance to the next slide. Awesome. Thank you. So just by way of background, the Pinole City Council has established City Council meeting procedures regarding the preparation and posting of agendas and the conduct of City Council meetings. In March of this year, the Pinole City Council approved changes to the City Council meeting procedures. And I think it was the following meeting, the City Council directed staff to work with the Municipal Code Update Subcommittee to identify any necessary updates to the Pinole Municipal Code in order to align with the proposed revisions to the City Council meeting procedures. Next slide. So the task before the Municipal Code Update Subcommittee was to review the municipal code to identify any sections or chapters of the code that needed updating. And there were two chapters that were identified. The first is Chapter 2.04, dealing with the City Council, City Manager relations. And the second was Chapter 2.12, dealing with the council meeting time. Next slide. So I thought the easiest way to present this change would be to just have the language up. So this is a change to Chapter 2.04, the Council Manager Relations. The new language will read, and so the strike-through language is what's being removed from the existing ordinance, and then the underlined text is what's being added. So those are new words that are being added. So this section now reads, the City Council and its members shall deal with the administrative services of the city through the city manager, and no member of the City Council shall give orders or instructions to any subordinates of the city manager. The city manager shall take his or her orders and instructions from the City Council on matters requiring City Council approval only when sitting in a duly convened meeting of the City Council. Next slide. So those proposed revisions, they add language clarifying that the matters on which the City Council may direct the city manager must relate to those matters that are within the council's jurisdiction. And furthermore, it removes language which authorizes council members to act independently in directing subordinates of the city manager with respect to administrative matters. Next slide. So the second change to the municipal code would be a change to Chapter 2.12. And I do want to note that there's a typo in the ordinance as it appears in the meeting agenda. So there's a reference to the chapter number in the actual language of the ordinance. This is Section 2.12. I think 2.04 was repeated in the ordinance, so that will be corrected on second read. But this is a simple change of the meeting time. So our original meeting time for this chapter was, 6 p.m. is our meeting time. The new council meeting procedures changed the meeting time to 5 p.m. And so this change would change the 6 to 5. And that's a fairly straightforward change there. Next slide. And that's the description there. The intent behind the change was to account for lengthy meetings, in particular when we have regularly scheduled closed sessions that tend to run long. A 5 p.m. start time provides us with the opportunity to complete the meeting in time without having to extend by motion. Next slide. And so that concludes the presentation. The recommendation to the City Council is to introduce and waive the first reading of these two ordinances. It's the amendment to Chapter 2.04 and 2.12 of the Municipal Code, modifying the start time of the regularly scheduled City Council meetings, and the update to the City Council manager relations consistent with the update to the City Council meeting procedures. I do want to mention that these changes were reviewed by the Municipal Code Update Subcommittee, and so we discussed these changes, and they were approved by the Municipal Code Update Subcommittee. The plan here is to have this ordinance in place, and then we'll bring forward the actual council meeting procedures, and that'll be approved after this is concluded. And that concludes my report.
All right. Thank you, City Attorney Casher. We'll go to council for questions. We'll start with Councilmember Martinez-Rubin.
Thank you. Pardon me. Can we come back to me because I need to find the page that I have a question about? Thank you.
Sure. We'll go to Councilmember Sasai.
None at this moment. Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Toms. Councilmember Tave.
No questions. I just wonder when we have committees and set up time where I know that I sit on a couple committees with city staff that are looking for input. They're looking for questions. For example, the municipal code committee, right? How does this apply, or does it apply when we're doing instruction, or I don't know if it's orders, but it's more, this is what we'd like to see, or this is what we should bring back, or does it apply at all?
Yeah, so for committees and committee assignments, that authority is delegated to the subcommittee members. So for the municipal code subcommittee, for example, the duly appointed members of that subcommittee are kind of deputized with the authority to make recommendations to staff in their capacity as subcommittee members. But everything from those committees flow up to the city council for final approval ultimately anyway. And this ordinance is really focused mostly on administrative kind of matters. That's really what the ordinance is focused on. And it's really to try, it's consistent with the Brown Act in that those things, those kind of decision points that are within the jurisdiction of the council, those decisions really ought to be made at the dais with the full city council, as opposed to kind of individual council members directing.
And what would be an example of an administrative duty?
So if a council member, for example, wanted to direct the city manager to implement some specific kind of change with how he is directing his own staff, the city manager's employees, for example, or a kind of an administrative, we want you to meet 3 days a week as opposed to 2 days a week with staff on something. That's kind of an administrative decision that is within the purview of the city manager.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
All right. Thank you. And we'll go back to Councilmember Martinez-Rubin.
Thank you. I realize that we do as we go along, we learn as we go along, different issues come about before us as council members, and relative to the experience or inexperience that we may have, we will have questions or we won't know what questions to ask. All that to say that when I see in the language on matters requiring city council approval, will there be an approach that that was discussed in the subcommittee or that we might have, so that council members are acquainted with what are matters requiring city council approval? The question that you just asked, Councilmember Tate, I thought about, we wanted to have more goats in the city, coming up with that as a fun example, or maybe not so fun. Is that a matter of operations or administrative decision, or is that something that's more policy related, which is more clearly something that council members are responsible and are expected to be involved with. So the question here is, on matters requiring city council approval, is that too broad language? Why are we having that language there? Could we make it even clearer? Is it necessary to do so to both be efficient as well as to be more informed? Council members, so that our roles are clearly distinct as to what is operational / administrative and what is legislative policy, which is the role, as I understand it to be, of council members.
I think that's a good question. So just stepping back, the discussion at the subcommittee level was really focused on finding language in this particular chapter of the municipal code that would allow for kind of no change from a practical aspect. We really wanted to find language that that would allow you as council members to continue operating in the way you're operating. So anything that you're currently doing, asking questions of the city manager regarding goats, that's an inquiry to the city manager that you can absolutely make, and I think are encouraged to do so. I think what's being specifically called out here were to be if a council member were to approach a department head about the goat issue and direct them to do something specific. That's something that really should flow through the city manager, and I think that's the administrative aspect that we're really trying to identify here. If there's a directive from the council regarding an administrative matter, or let's bring more goats on to deal with kind of fire prevention issues, that would be a council level decision, request for a future agenda item, and then a discussion at the council level. But it's not to prohibit inquiries to the city manager or anything like that. So you guys are doing everything consistent with this ordinance currently.
So I guess through the mayor, notifications of issues, residents say, hey, this or that, going to staff. I mean, obviously we go to city manager, but I think currently our practice is to CC the city manager and CC staff and try to keep everybody in the loop. If we're notified, so it's just as long as it's in the context of notifying inquiries, that type of deal, then we'd be in line with this ordinance. Then. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. That means we'll open it up for public. We'll open the public hearing for public comment. Are there any public comments?
Yes, thank you. Rafael Menes.
Good evening again, Rafael Mess, resident of Pinole, and I've definitely got questions about this one in particular. Leaving aside the numbering of the amendment, I don't have a problem with the 2.12 portion. I have a problem with the 2.04 portion. Because some of it makes sense. You're basically saying individual council members can't give direction to the city manager or to department heads. That's why there's a lot of the any member thereof, and direction can only be given on the dais rather than somehow doing a non-Brown Act violative sort of thing, meeting off the dais. But the bit that concerns me in particular is the except for the purpose of inquiry. That's explicitly struck out. Because it seems to me, and I know this is going to be wandering a bit from the direct point, but speaking as a member of the public, sometimes I'll have questions and I'll be directed by the city manager to reach out directly to a given department head to address those questions, because it'll be simpler just to talk to that department head, like the finance director or the public works director, to get clarification on a given point rather than having to go through the city manager every time. But it seems like the way that this revised ordinance is written, not only can individual council members not give orders to particular department heads, which I think obviously we all agree shouldn't be the case, but that they also can't ask questions to particular department heads, that everything has any questions for the administrative staff, because I'm reading administrative services maybe a bit more broadly than the city attorney is. I see that as basically everything that falls under the city manager's control. So it's saying the city council deals with the administrative services of the city through the city manager, whether it says only or not. It's pretty clearly that's just through the city manager, no direct contact with the department heads. And that the striking of except for the purpose of inquiry at least seems to apply to a lay person's reading, that individual council members can't make direct inquiries, whether it's for the purpose of, constituent information or just update about a given point on what's going on in the city or for whatever purpose. Not orders, but inquiries are being blocked by striking the except for the purpose of inquiry language. So seeing as you've still got the and no member of the city council shall give orders or instructions to any subordinates of the city manager, I think that will be sufficient to block the thing that we're all concerned about the Brown Act stuff of basically taking over the city manager's role and individual council members or even the council as a whole inappropriately usurping the city manager's power, but still leaving space for, reasonable inquiry. Thank you.
City Clerk Bell, are there any other public comments? And then City Attorney Casher, if you want to add commentary there.
Let's see if there's any remote comments.
No, there are no online comments.
Great. All right, thank you for your comments. I will bring it back to council for other council comments, but I'll turn it to City Attorney Casher for response.
Yeah, I just wanted to offer. I think and this was a few months ago now, but when we discussed this language, I recall the removal of the except for the purpose of inquiry was actually to broaden the ability of the city council to work with the city manager, because by having that in there, it really says except that's the only way in which the council would deal with the city manager, kind of except for purpose of inquiry. And this actually allows for inquiry, and it also doesn't prevent the city manager to essentially authorize the council to reach out to department heads. So this is not meant to be so restrictive of the city manager that the city manager couldn't inform council members that, hey, it's perfectly appropriate for you to reach out to anybody you like. But I think the prior version was to restrict the city manager role a little bit more. I think this ends up actually providing more flexibility. If people have thoughts on that, but the removal of except for the purpose of inquiry, I think that was viewed as narrowing what can be discussed between the city manager and the city council, and the removal of that was really to make it include, you could deal with the city manager for all administrative services, and then that could be kind of discussed more broadly between the parties. Not sure if that's more confusing or not, but that's yeah.
That was our understanding when we met as a committee too.
Okay. Can you repeat that, City Attorney? It actually was the one thing that I saw when I read this ordinance that I was a little confused about. When I read the edits, it says the city council and its members shall deal with the administrative services of the city through the city manager, comma, except for the purpose of inquiry, comma, and in some ways, I guess maybe the original language wasn't really clear. So now it's open to, I guess, questions. Can you repeat what you just said?
Yeah, so I think the idea here was, so if we just read it with the language that was stricken, the city council and its members shall deal with the administrative services of the city through the city manager, except for the purpose of inquiry. That kind of opens up and provides the ability of the council to speak with any member of, I guess, on any inquiry. And so this really allows more for the city manager to provide that direction on whether or not, how inquiries can be made. And it just seemed like, I don't know, I think as a committee, we felt like it could just be removed without any impact on the sentence, because ultimately it's a discussion between the council and the city manager as to how inquiries get fielded with staff. And so it was kind of a not necessary, I guess, to have in there.
That makes much more. Yeah. Got it. Okay. Other comments or questions from council? Councilmember Martinez?
No, as having heard the second explanation from City Attorney Casher, I think also it's a matter of having a city manager understand how best to work with the staff and how the staff would want inquiries to occur, and also in a way having a sense of the volume of those requests, because the volume of requests can come from a single council member or multiple council members, and it just can get really become a matter that the city manager would want to know about in order to be responsive to that. How that responsiveness would occur, then of course the city manager would have the prerogative to determine, and the council members would have the ought to have the expectation then of understanding how that's going to occur, so that the flow of communication ultimately occurs well. Yeah.
If I could just add one more comment. So I also think the removal of the word only was significant here, because the prior language read, the city council and its members shall deal with the administrative services of the city only through the city manager. So by removing that, there's an acknowledgement that the city council will interact with other members of city staff, but it's through the city manager that should occur, and not so again, it's not limiting every communication to directly with the city manager. It's really just allowing for those requests to flow through the city manager, and then there can be some discussion from a practical standpoint, of how that gets implemented.
Well, thank you again to the Municipal Code Subcommittee for filtering these things through, making it easier for us. So,
Yeah, and
if you'd like to make a motion, otherwise,
if I could just make a comment, yeah, I think what it was is we didn't want to bombard the city manager with all the details and everything that we get from the community, but also know that if there was a question or something that needed to escalate to the city manager, that as a council member you could kind of say, city manager Murray, I'm wondering about this issue, and it seems to be becoming a hot topic in Pinole. But at the same time, if it's something small like a noise complaint or something that seemed a little bit more, you'd send an email to I don't know, the chief and the city manager, CC the city manager, right? That would be on that priority. So I think it was really hard to find the words here, but I think everybody stepped back away from by striking things to try to make sure that there's a balance there that can be acknowledged.
great.
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we introduce and waive the first reading of an ordinance amending the Pinole Municipal Code Section 2.04.200 to update the description of the city council and city manager relations, and amending Section 2.12.010 to modify the start time of the regularly scheduled city council meetings, consistent with the updated procedures.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Toms. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Tave, is any questions on the motion? Not seeing any. City Clerk Bell, will you call the roll, please?
Thank you. Council members Martinez Rubin,
Yes.
Tave,
Yes.
Sasai,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Toms,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you, Council, as well as our public commenters. That brings us to item number 11, which is old business. We have none this evening. And that brings us to item 12, which is new business. We have none this evening. So we thank you. And that brings us to our item 13, which is our second citizens to be heard forum. For anyone who didn't speak during the first one, Madam City Clerk, do we have any public comments for this section?
None in person. I'll ask if we have any remote.
We do not have any remote.
There are no comments.
Okay, I see one in the audience, perhaps. We don't have. Mr. Menes, did you fill out?
Rafael
do.
Menez.
Certainly. So good evening again. I just wanted to briefly state that I got a message from a member of the community stating that there are organizations in the community that are doing partial donation shares. I think like Panda Express was something. I'm not entirely sure what the connection was. Probably the Red Cross is also doing events. And there was one or two other organizations. Let me pull up the links I saw. So there was also the Maui Food Bank, and the URL for that was Maui MAUIFOODBANK.org, and the Hawaii Community Foundation, which is HAWAICOMMUNITYFOUNDATION.org. as some more local sources to provide support to the people of Maui if people are interested. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Menes. City Clerk Bell, do you have any other public comments?
Deputy Stone, are there any remote comments at this time?
No, there are no remote comments.
Thank you.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you so much. That does bring us to adjournment. We do have one request from a council member on our adjournment, as well as we will be adjourning in memory of those we've lost, those lost Americans in Maui, as well as fire survivors, and of course, in remembrance of Amber Swartz. But I'll bring it to Councilmember Tave if you. would like
Right.
to-
I just wanted to ask for adjournment in memory of Megan Soriano at Sequoia Real Estate. I think she was the office manager there for 7 years. She was really instrumental, I know, at my time on council for getting the tree lighting off the ground. Heavy involvement in the car show, and the connection between small businesses in Pinole. She was 35 years old, and so I just wanted to adjourn in her memory.
Thank you, Councilmember Tave. Any other adjournments? All right. Well, we are now ready to adjourn, and I want to adjourn the meeting to the regular meeting of September 5th in remembrance of Megan Soriano, in remembrance of the Americans we've lost in Maui, as well as those who are still struggling as fire survivors in Maui, and of course, in remembrance of Amber Swartz. Good evening, everyone.